welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Re-Watch-Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it's episode number 053 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from January 30th, 1993, taped January 18th, 1993, at the Rec Center in Newton, North Carolina. My name is Arya, and welcome to the show. Now, in case you've never checked out the Smoky Mountain Re-Watch-Along Project, what we do here, it is really quite simple. We talk about every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1 on February 1st, 1992. We go all the way to episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the so-so, the okay, the great, the incredible, the tremendous, the one-of-a-kind, the out-of-this-world, the sucky, the awful, the forgettable, the stuff you never want to see again, the stuff you'll never stop talking about. We watch some matches, we listen to some promos, we talk about some angles, and ultimately, we have fun for an hour going to the Wayback Machine to 1993. And technically, this is the 1-year anniversary show. It's not noted as such, especially since those original first few shows were taped in October and November of 1991. But for the sake of argument, this is exactly 1 year since they started broadcasting the shows on February 1st, 92, which means, yes, we've been doing this show, the one you're listening to right now, for 1 full year. And of course, you are more than welcome to dive into the archive. We are, of course, available on almost all your favorite streaming platforms. Just search for the Something Else Podcast Network. You get this show. You get Something Else. You get all the bonus shows that I do. And you just have some fun talking and listening to some talk about wrestling. All right? So let's go into this week's intro with Bob Caudle and Dutch Mantell. They're going to discuss what we have this week. Plus, they're going to draw the name for the Beat the Champ TV title match.
Welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Hi, wrestling fans. I'm Bob Caudle, along with my tag partner right here, Dutch Mantell, and we got a great hour in store for all our fans this week. Dutch, we're going to be hearing from our heavyweight champion, the Dirty White Boy, Primetime Brian Lee. He's got a special announcement for us. The Weird Wild Kevin Sullivan is going to be in action. And what about this big main event we got?
After many weeks of working and negotiating, finally, my boys, Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden, they have their shot today at the Rock and Roll Express for the tag team titles right here on TV and on Down and Dirty with Dutch. Today is a big day. We're going to find out Reno Riggins' answer to Ron Wright, whether he's going to join Mr. Wright's stable right here today on Down and Dirty.
What about our Beat the Champ match, Dutch?
As you can see, I have a hat right here.
Yeah, you got
Tracy Smothers is our Beat the Champion, and we're going to draw out of this hat to see who Tracy Smothers will face today. I will draw, Bob, and then I will read the name.
All right.
What's that say, Bob?
Dutch.
Okay. Oh, the name is Brad Batten. Brad Batten will face Tracy Smothers today in Beat the Champ.
All right, fans, we're about ready with our action in our opening match. Let's go to the ring.
Okay. So the big main event this week, the Rock and Roll Express defending the tag team titles against the Stud Stable. The Stud Stable, as we've noted, they've never gotten a title shot, and this is their first big title match, and they're going to get it this week on TV. Plus, Reno Riggins is going to be on Down and Dirty with Dutch to finally tell us whether or not he's going to accept Mr. Ron Wright's offer, his generous offer, to be taken under the wing of Mr. Wright and Dirty White Boy. Yeah, he's going to have some young boy duties, but, he's going to learn to become a big champion wrestler like the Dirty White Boy and learn under, be under the learning tree of the great Mr. Ron Wright. How could he possibly turn that down? And then Dutch pulls out his big-ass cowboy hat, where he's allegedly put the names of all of the contenders for the Beat the Champ into it, and pulled out the name of Brad Batten, which, let's be honest, when was the last time we saw Brad Batten on TV? But hey, that match is going to happen later on. It's his chance at the $1,000 and the Beat the Champ TV title. But for now, let's jump into the ring here for our opening match. Tim Horner versus the Dark Secret. Caudle calls Horner one of the most popular athletes in professional wrestling. So this is before Al Gore invented the internet. So we're not loving him for being meme worthy. Caudle said Horner gives more than 100% in every match. How is that possible? If you give more than 100%, that says that there's a new bar as to what 100% is. So you now, like, the new 100% is what you're giving. You can't give 104%. You can't give 108%. You can give 205%. You can only give 100%. It's the only thing that's technically possible. So Road Dogg, I mean the Dark Secret, sells like a guy in wrestling school, which is a remark that I resemble. During the match, Caudle announced that they are going to be starting a wrestling school. What they don't mention is Horner runs the school, and according to Cornette, the only two people who graduated were so bad that he would not even name them so as to not embarrass them. Which, I gotta say, as we've mentioned, Horner is a good wrestler as long as he keeps his mouth shut. But, you know, sometimes even good wrestlers, they're not good trainers. So I don't even blame Horner for that. I blame him for everything else he's done, but not for not being a good trainer anyway. There is so much yellow in this match between Horner's tights, ropes are yellow, the turnbuckles are yellow, and the back wall is yellow. There's a lot of yellow here. And the finish is fucked up as Horner goes for the natural bridge, but they kind of fall on each other. So Horner breaks out the perfect plex of all things, the fisherman suplex, and gets the win. Another fuck up in something involving Horner that was not covered up in editing, which continues my theory that there's a little bit of self-sabotage, a little bit of punishment for that thing with him and the disabled child that he made Bullet Bob take the title from. But again, that's just my theory. So let's now go to Caudle, who is going to be with Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff.
All right, fans, and with us right now, here he is, Mr. Wonderful himself, Paul Orndorff. And I saw one of the guys that have been giving you a lot of trouble. You just saw him with a tremendous win up there in the ring, and that's that White Lightning Tim Horner, Mr. Wonderful.
Well, it seems to me that Tim Horner has gotten a lot of the respect of the people around here.
Yep.
But Mr. Wonderful has been all over the world. Mr. Wonderful has beaten Ron Simmons. Mr. Wonderful has beaten Ronnie Garvin. Mr. Wonderful has beaten Hulk Hogan.
Right.
Mr. Wonderful has done everything that a wrestler can possibly do. But there's a certain few here in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Shut your mouth up. I don't like to hear this crap. I don't like to hear it. There's a certain amount of people here that isn't giving Mr. Wonderful the respect he needs. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that somewhere along the line, down the road, that somebody's going to get hurt real bad before it's over and done with, until I get the respect I need.
All right, fans, there it is from Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. We'll be back. We'll have more. Right.
So it's hard to, go ho-hum for a Paul Orndorff promo because Paul Orndorff cuts amazing promos, as we've seen and as we're sadly going to have to knock it used to because he's not long for this world. But, this was your standard typical Mr. Wonderful promo. He's beaten Hulk Hogan. He's beaten Ron Simmons. And things with Ron Simmons is like he's been added to the list because Orndorff's been on WCW Saturday Night, wrestling Ron Simmons, among other people. And he's beaten Ron Simmons, who was just the WCW champion. So it brings more credibility to him. And it brings more credibility to Smoky Mountain that they would have somebody who just on TV beat Ron Simmons. Because, okay, he's probably never pinned Hogan, but, he's probably beaten Hogan by count out or disqualification in house shows. But since those probably never aired on TV, most fans don't know he actually beat Hulk Hogan. So it sounds like normal heel bullshit. But we saw, with our own two eyes, we've seen him beat Ron Simmons. So it lends credibility to not just him, but to the entire company in general. And of course, he vows to hurt someone real, real bad. So I don't know where Bullet Bob actually is, but they're going to cover up for him the next few weeks by saying he's in Japan. And they show several Japanese magazines that have had Smoky Mountain coverage, and that leads to a primetime Brian Lee promo. And first he shows videos of Sullivan kicking primetime Brian Lee's ass, and then we return to get the promo with the announcement of a big match coming up.
And he's a weird one, primetime, no doubt.
It's exactly what I'm talking about. Kevin Sullivan, every time I step in the ring with you, you bust my head with something. Kevin Sullivan, every time I face you, you're putting scars on my head. Well, I'll tell you what. I went to Commissioner Bob Armstrong, and I said I need to take care of this problem once and for all. And he granted me a match. You know, no matter how many matches I've signed down the road for Kevin Sullivan, February 19th, Kevin, I got you first blood. That means falls don't count. You coming in the ring with whatever you want to doesn't count. The first man to bleed loses the match. And I guarantee you one thing. You drew first blood. Primetime Brian Lee will draw last. I'll see you February 19th.
All right, fans, that's from primetime Brian Lee.
Okay. So I don't know if it's a wise idea for him to be asking for a first blood match, because this boy, he is being opened up like a sieve every time, Kevin Sullivan comes within striking distance of him. So I don't know if it's a smart idea to go for a first blood match, but hey, it's a way to continue the feud without anybody ever actually losing. Let's be honest here. Now, remember how we've in the past noted that they air these local promos on Smoky Mountain that end up spoiling stuff that, gets aired, later on in the show? Well, that happened again here. Rock and Roll spoiled the main event of the show during a pre-tape promo. And, we won't play it, we won't spoil it, but they're building up a match in a few weeks where they flat out tell you what happened in the main event. So back to the ring, Kevin Sullivan versus Johnny Kidd. Sullivan runs to the ring to attack Kidd. Dutch, by the way, and this is, this is big news here. Dutch announces that the stud stable has not yet arrived. Interesting. Anyway, Night Stalker eventually makes it to the ring in time for Sullivan to hit Kidd with a chair, which was not a disqualification. They get back in the ring, and Sullivan is kicking Kidd's ass, and the referee just stops the match. Night Stalker calms him down by smothering him with a cloth, and somehow Johnny Kidd was declared the winner by disqualification, ostensibly for Kevin Sullivan kicking too much ass. So, out of the ring, let's go back to Bob Caudle, who is with Kevin Sullivan and the Night Stalker.
What in the world is it with you guys anyway? I mean, how can you get any wilder than you've been, Kevin?
First of all, I'm really not a bad guy.
Oh, no.
Persecution makes people do strange things. First, Commissioner Armstrong, you try to keep me out of Smoky Mountain Wrestling because of my violent past. All of us make mistakes, Commissioner. You should know that. When you come down for breakfast and look at your 4 sons, you've made 4 mistakes, at least in your life. And then, when you couldn't keep me out of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, you hired the Mongolian Stomper to eradicate me. But when I the Stomper, the fire, and singed him, he looked like Mongolian beef rather than a warrior. And then you sick, demented individual, Miss Armstrong, you got that poor young Brian Lee to get out of a sick bed and give him a quest of some kind of holy grail to get rid of me. But Mr. Lee's rather large baboon-like head met the golden spike and it split open like a pineapple. But Commissioner, now you're getting into my personal life. And you don't get into my personal life because it's okay if you don't like early release, it happens to be a law. Just the other day, I was sitting with my analyst, and he had a bunch of doctors with them. And there was a fly buzzing around the room, and it landed on my hand. And in the old days, I would have squashed that fly, or maybe at least pulled off the wings. But I didn't do anything. And they all said to me, look at him. He wouldn't even hurt a fly. But now, Bob Armstrong, you want Brian Lee to draw blood on me in a first blood match? Well, as a friend of mine said from Milwaukee, or was that Hackensack? Send more, they all taste good. Ah, send more, they all taste good. Send more, they all taste good.
Fans, we're going to be back. He's cured, you can tell that. We'll be back right after this.
All right. So another, just out of this world Kevin Sullivan promo. And it's like, this is what's missing. One of the many things missing in modern day wrestling. And this isn't going to be current wrestling sucks. Old wrestling's great, rant, but in some ways it is. It's you do not get this level of believability these days. And maybe that's a good thing, but I'm not going to sit here in 20 years reviewing Monday Night Raw from 2024, no matter how good the build to WrestleMania was, no matter how good or bad it may be on a weekly basis. I'm not going to sit there and fucking do it because there's nothing that really stands out. There's nothing really memorable about it. There's nothing about it that makes you sit here and go, man, oh man, I'm going to tape this. Well, I mean, who the hell tapes things anymore? But I'm going to tape this. I'm going to watch this again and again and again and again. No one fucking does that. No one cares. It's like, this shit, it's like Kevin Sullivan. I met this guy and I believe that he's a fucking crazy nut job who's going to come kick a whole bunch of ass. And, it's just tremendous. And, he says, he was kept out of Smoky Mountain for making mistakes. And then with a great line, he says, Bullet Bob has made 4 mistakes, and he sees those mistakes every morning when he sees his sons. Great line, right? He talks about turning the Stomper into Mongolian beef. He talks about splitting primetime Brian Lee's head open like a pineapple. And then, he freaks out, quoting his friend from either Milwaukee or Hackensack, saying, send more, they all taste good. And man, oh man, it sucks for Kevin that he wasn't 6-7 inches taller. It's because, honestly, I don't know. It's like, I know the world title is meant for real wrestlers, quote unquote, but it's like, this man should have been a world champion, or should have at least been strongly considered for a run with the belt. And I don't think he ever was. And that, I think, is a bigger travesty than a lot of shit we'll see here and talk about over the years. So with that, we go to commercial. We come back from commercial, and we have Down and Dirty with Dutch, where we're going to have the legendary Mr. Ron Wright, and we're going to find out what is the answer with Reno Riggins. And Reno Riggins, in case you forget, he's an enhancement talent. We've talked about it. He's a pretty good enhancement talent. And he never really got a push, and we always wondered why until, we heard him talk, and then we figured it out, but still. So Mr. Ron Wright, he is offered to take Reno Riggins under his wing and teach him and show him how to be the next great star, like the Dirty White Boy, like Mr. Ron Wright. And Reno pushed it off for a few weeks. He had to think about it. He wasn't sure whether or not he wanted to commit to Mr. Wright or not, but now we finally get our answer. So let's go to Down and Dirty with Dutch with Mr. Ron Wright.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Down and Dirty with Dutch. I'm Dutch Mantell, and of course, you're not. Today, I have on my program a special guest, a good friend of mine, the legendary Mr. Ron Wright. Let's all give him a real big hand, a legend in his own time right here. And Mr. Wright, I'm bringing you out here today because today is the day that Mr. Reno Riggins has said that he is going to give you an answer. Now, it's been several weeks, and I have him here. Mr. Riggins, will you come on in?
We already know what the man's going to tell me. He can't turn the fame Ron Wright down. How you doing, Mr. Reno? Glad to have you here. You know, today now, the time's up, and I want you to answer. I want you to go ahead and tell me that you're going to come into my stable so you can carry the bag of the Dirty White Boy, and we can begin to teach you some of the masterful wrestling that old brother Ron Wright's got, and I've done parlayed to the Dirty White Boy and made him the champion. Is that right?
Okay, Mr. Riggins, your answer after long weeks of deliberations and negotiations, I might add, what is your answer to Mr. Ron Wright? Will you join him?
Well, Mr. Wright, I've thought about your answer. I've thought about it long and hard for the past few weeks. I mean, I've had many of nightless sleep, and I'll tell you what, I've thought it over with myself. I've thought it over with my family, my friends. I've even talked to some of these great fans out here. And really, I talked to my dad, and my dad told me, he said, son, if you can't do something on your own, then just don't do it at all. So I'm going to have to stand alone on this situation, Mr. Wright.
What? You crazy? You don't know what you're saying, man. You're turning down the great Ron Wright. I'm the walking, talking, living legend in wrestling, and you're going to turn me down, not help carry the Dirty White Boy's suitcase? I can't believe this. I can't believe this.
Are you turning him down?
Yeah. No, you can't do that. That's against the law. I ain't never had nobody to turn me down in my life. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to come around and do better than that.
Now, you see how you've got him upset? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. A man like this. Calm down, Ron. Okay. I tell you something.
He got a bit of sense. He oughtn't even been.
Okay, fans.
You something. I can take a man off of the street and teach him enough in 5 minutes about wrestling to whoop that lame brain idiot. I made the offer to him to begin with.
Calm down, calm down. Okay, fans, they've seen the answer to Reno Riggins. I don't think it's right, but Mr. Wright, are you okay? Are you okay? Okay, we'll be back in 2 minutes. Don't forget that big championship match coming up.
So that was a 5.5-star freakout. Reno Riggins got carried to a 5-star segment here because suddenly, the answer, we asked it about a month or so ago. Why didn't Reno Riggins ever get, more of a push, especially in the early 90s when the WWF was so desperate for talent? Barry Horowitz got a push. All these people randomly got a push, but Reno Riggins never made it out of enhancement talent duty. And we wondered why. Then we put a microphone in front of his face, and suddenly we were wondering where Tim Horner was. Well, maybe not that bad, still. So he was thinking of Mr. Wright's answer over and over again, and eventually takes his dad's advice and turns down Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright, oh my holy ghost. He just, legitimately, we've mentioned before that we have all these people who can cut great promos on this show. And there are some weeks where they're all in competition to see who has the best promo. And this is one of those weeks where it's maybe the words he said by themselves weren't great. But you literally need to hunt down a copy of this episode to watch Mr. Ron Wright in his wheelchair. He's jumping up and down and taking the wheelchair with him. So the wheelchair is taking flight as he is screaming about, Reno Riggins, turning him down. This is against the law, And like I said, this is the greatest thing in Reno Riggins' career, and he had nothing to do with it. And eventually says he could take someone off the streets and teach him in 5 minutes how to beat Reno. But that shit was just great. And I would strongly recommend checking that out. The January 30th, 1993 edition of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Just to watch Mr. Ron Wright's epic freak out. So from here, we go back to the announce desk where Bob Caudle announces that the stud stable has still not arrived at the building. Where are they? And Dutch, he has no idea what the hell's going on, so he steps away to make a phone call. And then we go to our Beat the Champ TV title match. Tracy Smothers defending against Brad Batten. As we mentioned, this is Tracy's second match as the Beat the Champ. And since Dutch isn't here, Dirty White Boy tags in to help Caudle do commentary. White Boy said it's a fluke that Tracy beat him, and there is no way that a man with the skill of Tracy Smothers could run the table, be the champ for 5 weeks, and get the $5,000 bonus. White Boy talked about all the great wrestlers he's defended against, and sadly never mentioned when he defeated the Canadian champion Newton Steffi, who famously is the champion of Canada, who won the title in Canada. Smothers went for a top rope crossbody, but Batten rolled through for a near fall, and Tracy won with a jackknife cradle. So Tracy Smothers, still your Beat the Champ, gets another $1,000, and the fans still love him. So Stud Stable's still not here, and Jim Cornette is showing up at the announce desk with Sandy Scott to go over what the hell is going to happen next.
All right, fans, and that was our Beat the Champ match, and you saw Tracy Smothers right there as Tracy walks out with another $1,000 and moves ever closer to that $5,000 bonus. Jim Cornette, Sandy Scott.
Hello, Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott is general manager of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I sure do think that he does a fine job. And I tell you what, Mr. Scott, I would hate to see these fine viewers of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the millions of people out there on television, I'd hate to see them deprived, to see them cheated out of a title match. They were promised a tag team title match today.
Well, let me tell you something.
Let me just ask you this one favor. Please, Mr. Scott, and I know all these fine folks out there, they would agree with me. If the Stud Stable don't get here in time, then you promised the people a title match. Hey, you know, false advertising, very bad. Tell you what, the Heavenly Bodies can take that match. What's going on here? Hey, what are you out here for? Hey, I'm out here with Mr. Scott. He invited me. Mr. Scott, I really appreciate it. I tell you what, I think we should get that match.
Let me explain something to you.
What match?
We have told the fans that there will be a tag team title match here tonight, and there will be.
Yeah.
If the Stud Stable does not come here, then the Heavenly Bodies could have it.
No, yes. Wait a minute, they won't. Hey, come here. They'll be here. They will be here. It's like that. Who is this guy anyway?
Well, he's the manager. The manager of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Our commissioner, Bob Armstrong, is in Japan. Your guys better show up.
What happened? They should be here.
We'll be back. Right now, let's take this brief time out.
All right. So you heard Jim Cornette with general manager Sandy Scott. Corny, of course, kisses ass. He puts over the fine job. Just a fine job Sandy does. And he would hate to see the millions of fans who tune in every week to be deprived of a title match. Of course, Dutch runs in to protest. By the way, Cornette is wearing a Brother Love suit. And I'm assuming this is done on purpose. But I'm talking about the white jacket, the white pants, the red shirt, the white tie. Although it's kind of funny because, and who knows, maybe Brucey lent him his suit because the white pants and the tie are actually stained as if you threw it in with a red shirt into the washer. Because it's that pale pink color that happens, especially back then, if you don't separate your clothes properly. But anyway, Sandy Scott did say that if the Stud Stable does not show up, then the Heavenly Bodies will get the title shot. And thankfully, I did not use initials with Sandy Scott because I already, have SS for Stud Stable. So I just had to say SS said if SS doesn't show up, then HB will get the title shot. Because that beats having to write out Stud Stable, Heavenly Bodies, and Primetime Brian Lee, and all this shit over and over and over again. It's when initials work. So we go to commercial, we come back from commercial, and it's tag team champions, the Rock and Roll Express versus the Heavenly Bodies with Jim Cornette. So nope, the Stud Stable did not arrive on time for their title match. We do have almost 20 minutes left in the show, so we do have plenty of time for a really good match. Dutch is, of course, understandably freaking out as the match begins, which is, of course, distracting from the start where the Rock and Roll run wild and making the Heavenly Bodies bail to the outside of the ring to regroup. Now, here's where things are going to get interesting, and you probably knew this was going to happen, but suddenly Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden have arrived. Let's go to that audio.
Now they're not here. I don't know what happened. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Here they are.
Well, they're ringside and they got their bags.
Come here, Robert. Come here.
Too late now.
Where you guys been?
They're having our match up there now.
Yeah, our match. I know it. Come here, Robert. Where you been?
I've been out changing tires, Dutch Mantel.
Where in Charlotte?
Yeah.
At the motel? That's your match there.
We wait for the title match for West to get
Hey, this is a bogus match. They brought out some other guy I've never seen before, some kind of general manager. It's a big shaft, guys, and they got our match right there.
I'll tell you right now, Dutch, nobody's gonna beat the Rock and Roll Express but me and Jimmy Golden.
There you go. See, I told you something, Hammond. Something about tires or something.
Here they go, charging toward the ring, and a bunch of people are getting in front of Golden.
What are they
and Fuller
doing?
to keep her from getting to the ring. We got referees, we got security force, and everybody now trying to hold them back to keep them out of the match.
Why are they holding them back? It's their own legal match. It's their legal right to be in that ring. And yet, hey, we are getting shafted here. We're getting shafted. Tom Armstrong is in Japan. Some other impersonators out here taking his job. They won't let him in the ring. That's rivalry their match.
All right. So Fuller and Golden have arrived. Unfortunately, they've arrived a few minutes late. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. So they've lost their title match. It's now, of course, in the hands of the Heavenly Bodies. And something happened with their car. Something wrong with the tires. Who knows what the hell happened here, but Fuller said him and Golden were trying to hunt down tires and couldn't get any. And here we are. So they did threaten to basically go to the ring and, interfere in the match. But a whole bunch of large people came out and essentially forced them to the match. Forced them to the back. They didn't force them to the match. Wouldn't have needed to force them to the match. Anyway, the match itself continues. So Tom throws Morton into the corner, but Gibson breaks that up. Stan then tried to replicate it, but it bit him in the ass. Caudle brings up that the Rock and Roll Express will be on a WCW pay-per-view coming up as the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions. And Dutch mentions that the Stud Stable could have been on the show as champions if they had had their match. Finally, Tom took Ricky down with a clothesline, and the Heavenly Bodies got the heat. Tom missed an E-drop, and Morton made the hot tag, and of course, a four-way breaks out. Cornette trips Morton, and while Mark Curtis goes to the ropes to tell him off, Morton accidentally runs into Curtis, so Curtis is now laid out on the floor. Rock and Roll hit the double drop kick, but no referee. Killer Kyle runs out and hits Morton with a slapjack. Golden and Fuller come out and begin fighting with both Killer Kyle and, I wrote Jimmy Golden, but probably Stan Lane, because Tom loads his boot, but Dutch runs over and stops him from doing anything and actually gets the foreign object off of the boot. He throws it to Morton. Morton uses the foreign object to knock Tom the fuck out and makes the cover. Now Dutch is running over to go grab Mark Curtis to try to wake him up and throw him into the ring. While this is going on, out runs from the back Bobby fucking Eaton, of all people. Beautiful Bobby. He runs out. He gives Morton a top rope leg drop. He flips them over. Dutch, having no idea what happened, because he's got his back to the ring, he's dragging the referee and throws the ref into the ring. Mark Curtis makes the 3 count. And yes, thanks to Beautiful Bobby Eaton, the Heavenly Bodies have won back the Smoky Mountain Tag Team titles. So, Jesus H. Christ, that is a lot to unfold here. But now the Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette, they have Bobby Eaton back. And of course, this is all because that, Corny had his agreement with, Bill Watts, who of course is on his way out of WCW right now, but we don't quite know that yet. But anyway, this was supposed to set up a whole bunch of stuff moving forward, but it's going to give us a little bit of stuff. Not a lot, but a little bit of stuff. But let's go now to Bob Caudle, who's standing by with our new champions and our extra guests.
Friends, I've been trying to sort it out. I still don't know what all happened. What a shock it is to see this man right here, Bobby Eaton here. And I do know this, out of all of that happened, the only thing I know at the moment is that we've got new tag team champions, the Heavenly Bodies.
You know, it shouldn't be any surprise because everybody realizes that Jim Cornette gets things done. The Heavenly Bodies are champions, and now the greatest day of my life, Beautiful Bobby Eaton is back where he belongs once and for all, brother. And I'm going to tell you something. And I want you to listen right now, Bobby. I tell you, it's so great. I wish there was 3 tag team belts so that you could have one too. Hey, Bobby, his belt.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, no, wait, we'll work it out later on. But the important part is, I want the Stud Stable to realize, I want the Rock and Roll Express to realize, load the wagons, brother, because I got the horses that can carry the load. Beautiful Bobby, Sweet Stan, and Dr. Tom, the 2 greatest tag teams of all time, have been combined into a single unit. And rock and roll all you want to, but the point is that we are together, we're champions and will remain so. Everywhere that you see the Heavenly Bodies scheduled to appear from this point onward, you'll see Bobby Eaton, you'll see Stan Lane, and you will see Dr. Tom Pritchard, Wright Stanfield.
2 of the greatest tag teams in the history in the annals of professional wrestling are reunited. The greatest day of my life. Beautiful Bobby Eaton is back. This is it. We've got to go. Hey, wait. Stay out here, baby. And I think I just found a big rotten piece of tuna standing right here.
Let me tell you something. You, Golden, and you, I don't know, Chewbacca, whatever your name is, you come out here, you were scared. That's why you didn't with this cockamamie story about having 4 flat tires over at the hotel, and you expect people to believe it.
4 flat tires? You son of a...
Everybody's breaking up. Stan Lane, Jimmy Golden.
So it's another one of those angles as old as wrestling itself, where, you know, it's not, unfortunately, it's a little botched in execution just because Fuller forgot the key line during his previous promo. Essentially, you know, Fuller was supposed to say that they had a flat tire. He kind of referenced it when saying they had to go hunting for tires, but, you know, he didn't say that he only had 1 flat tire. Because the key is then Corny, you know, slips and says, oh, it's not my fault that you had to go get 4 flat tires. Which is, or you had to get 4 new tires to get 4 flats, and because that's the key to Fuller going, you son of a bitch, because I only mentioned 1 flat tire. Weirdly enough, WCW did that one a lot better years later with Johnny B. Bad and Diamond Dallas Page of all fucking things, but that's a story for another day. But anyway, the whole point of this was, you know, Bob Eaton's back, and we've now merged the 2 greatest tag teams ever into one phenomenal 3-man unit. And he says that when you see the Heavenly Bodies advertised, you'll see Bobby, you'll see Stan, and you'll see Tom. And then we break down into a crazy 8-way free-for-all because in addition to the Stud Stable and Dutch, the Rock and Roll Express also ran out. And the funny thing is, it's like, you know, the Rock and Roll Express's part in this is really contrived, and it's sad in some ways because, like, they're building up this great 3-way program, but they're doing a lot better job building up a tag team match between the 2 heel teams. But it's like, well, we gotta sneak in the Rock and Roll Express here, but it's like, in many ways, the Rock and Roll Express are being greatly overshadowed in this angle, and like in many ways, like there's no legitimate reason why they're even involved. Except they were the champions, and now you have a little bit of reason because they just got screwed out of the belts. But it's like, you know, Morton hasn't done any promos for this. Gibson, of course, never does a promo for this. And it's like it's been all Stud Stable and, you know, the Heavenly Bodies. And, you know, it's great because I can't wait to see where this goes from here. I mean, I know where it's going, and there's more big stuff still to come. But, you know, it's just one of these angles that, like, they are on fire with this angle. They're on point. Like, it's one of those things, again, where it's sad that they weren't a bigger deal when this great program is happening. But, hey, it's making for good radio here. as we talk about the greatness that this was. So we're 53 down and have 147 to go. But before we finish things up, we want to tell you what else is happening this week in wrestling, because I can tell you January 30th until I'm blue in the face, but you may not know what happened around that time or what the hell's going on. So the big news in wrestling is the death of Andre the Giant. He's the first of three big deaths that are coming up the next month or so. And in many ways, this is the least shocking of the three of them. But anyone who knew about Andre's health knew that he ultimately did not have a long life in store for him. But that certainly does not make his death any less tragic. Now, if you have never read either of these, first of all, Dave Meltzer wrote an incredible biography on Andre in The Observer that week from February of 1993. In my opinion, that by itself is worth subscribing to the Observer site for a month. Plus, if you don't like Dave or just don't want to give Dave your money, Bertrand Hebert wrote a simply phenomenal biography on Andre, which you can get on Amazon right now for around $10. There's nothing I could say right now that would compare to those writings, and I would strongly recommend both, to be perfectly honest with you, if you can. The other big news this week, Ric Flair has officially signed his contract with WCW and is expected to debut at Super Brawl 3. And then the news that's going to get tragic here in a little bit, and it's impossible to ignore, but it's because it's going to happen. The substance that Kerry Von Erich was caught with a few weeks ago when he was arrested was analyzed, and it was determined to be cocaine, which is a controlled substance and is a violation of his parole. He has a court date coming up on possession charges, and things are going south for Kerry right now. But so that's gonna do it here for another episode of the Smoky Mountain Re-Watch-Along Project. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all continue to listen. And that does it from here. We will talk to you again in 7 days.